Thanks for having me along today. It's a real honour to come along and talk to you today about some of the work we're doing. So I'm Drea, I'm Head of Data Science for National Highways, and I look after something called our Digital Lab, which really focuses on what we can do to maximise the value of our data. And I'll spend the next kind of 18 to 20 minutes talking to you about the way in which we put geospatial data front and centre of what we do. So this is a question that we ask ourselves, and this is the question that we've kind of challenged other businesses with as well. I really keep this in the back of your mind as I run through the presentation. The question that we challenge ourselves with is, if geography is core to your business, do you give it the attention that it deserves? And really that's a question that lots of big asset management companies like National Highways should ask themselves. So I'll give you a bit of an understanding of who National Highways are. I'm sure you're kind of accidentally aware of what we do because you all travel on our roads. So this slide just provides a bit of background for you. So around about 95 million miles are travelled on the strategic road network every year, and it carries about 3 times more people than the UK rail network. You all use our road network regularly for leisure or work. In distance, the strategic road network makes up a small proportion of all roads, but it makes up around about 34% of all car movements and 60% of freight. Your Amazon parcels definitely get to you via our network, so it's very important. We maintain, renew and operate a huge number of physical assets. You can see a selection on this slide. 1,000 streetlights, 10,000 miles of carriageway and 20,000 bridges, just to name a few. We're a really big asset management company and we play a strategically important role in England. We've got a really clear understanding of the physical assets. We value them at around about £128 billion. And this, in my mind, drives 2 questions. Firstly, what would happen if we treated our physical assets like we have done historically our data assets? There's a really flippant answer to this. We'd probably have about 3 of these bridges to different specifications. None of them would connect to the road network and we wouldn't know exactly where they are. This leads to the second, much more important question. What if we treated our data like we have done historically our physical assets? And today what I'll do is I'll share the journey we've been on to completely reevaluate the way we value our data, particularly our spatial data, and what that's meant for how we operate our business. So these are the key points to take away, and this is what we'll cover over the rest of the presentation. Firstly, what if we decided to treat our data in a different way? What if we treated it in a similar way to our physical assets? Secondly, what we found out by doing this. I'll then run through what we did. And finally, we'll talk about how we managed to elevate the conversation around geospatial data to a senior level within National Highways. Going back to the bridge analogy earlier, data is an asset in the same way that our physical assets are. So if we treat them the same way, we need to understand their value. In the same way that we know the bridge in a picture plays a vital role in connecting our country, we need to understand the role our data plays. In 2018, our Chief Data Officer kicked off a piece of work to get to the bottom of the value of our data. I'll talk through how we did this very briefly. The first step was to work with economists to establish the economic value of our intangible assets. We knew that at the time our physical assets had a value of 115 billion, which has obviously gone up slightly. This represents the cost of replacing the strategic road network. We also know that our network has a cost benefit factor of 2.7. Multiplying the two together and then removing the value of physical assets gave us the value of our intangible assets, 196 billion. Of this, 60 billion was attributed to data. The next question was to understand what drives that value. We carried out more than 80 stakeholder interviews across 6 stakeholder groups. These stakeholder groups were leisure, local authorities, commuter, logistics, and retail and major transport hubs. We wanted to understand the use cases that drove the value. To pick on one, we understood that the strategic road network is incredibly important to the transport and logistics sector to get food to market. We then looked at the data sets National Highways owns that drive the value through the use cases. You can see on the slide that we identified 26 data sets in National Highways supporting 27 key initiatives. These important data sets are contained in the small table on the slide. Everything from flooding to traffic footage to flow and weather sensors and so on. There's quite a lot in there. I won't read them all out, but I'll kind of leave you to look briefly at them. The next stage was to understand how dependent each of these initiatives was on the various datasets. We did this through a workshop with leaders across National Highways. We used a predictive analytics model to rank the various initiatives on their reliance on data. This is contained in the table on the right-hand side of the slide. Ignore the numbers, but look at the colours. The green ones are the initiatives that most rely on data. Speed and flow management, diversion routes, and roadworks information stand out quite a lot to the top of the table. You can see there with the numbers in green. Some further data science was carried out to allocate the value to each of our data sets. We also have a really nice line of sight from the data set on the right hand side of this very messy diagram through to the initiative it added value to, into the stakeholder group it added the value to, and back to an understanding of what that intangible value was. This really helps us bring to life the value of data sets, which otherwise can be hard to understand. It wasn't my work. This took place before I joined the organisation. So it hurts my head a little bit, if I'm honest. I'll summarise why it's important. If I can move on my slides. So to cut a very long data valuation story short, we carried out robust analysis of the value and importance of our data, and the result was the location data for our strategic road network was the most important. It'd be a fairly irrelevant presentation here if it wasn't. We discovered that most of our use cases are dependent on our geospatial network model. The network model is about 10% of the total value of our data and 3% of the intangible value. It's kind of a big deal. This left me in a quandary when I joined National Highways just before the start of the pandemic. Linking back to the question I posed right at the start of the presentation, we now knew that geography is important to our business, but we weren't giving it the attention it deserved. We needed to do something about this, and this is something I really wanted to put right when I joined. Okay, so how did we start? We looked to find out a bit more about the problems we have with geospatial data in the organisation. We undertook a fairly quick piece of discovery work and found out that the organisation had a number of system-level network models, which all differ slightly. This meant that we didn't have an agreed digital view of where our roads were. Given the importance of data, this was a problem. We were paying way over the odds for a number of different systems and viewers to exploit our geospatial data. There were also a few tricky problems, including a couple of things for our regulator, and the business wasn't clear on how to solve them. Really importantly, there was a potential safety risk. If we can't get our geometry data out quickly to sat-nav providers and others, there's a risk that drivers can be routed the wrong way, potentially into work sites. We set up a project to solve some of these problems. The project was broadly in these three areas on the slide now. We knew that before we had to solve the network model problem. There is currently a clear need for a consistent view of our strategic road and network location. This will become more and more important as we move into the world of connected and autonomous vehicles. We saw this piece of work as foundational to everything we wanted to do in the future. Next, we wanted to work out how we can better exploit our data. We wanted to give National Highways the ability to make the most out of its data and change the way the business works through its use. We launched something that we called our spatial portal, and it became an example of, and I'll come to an example of how it's been used. Finally, there was a real need to open up our spatial data to others. There was an immediate use case, the need to publish emergency refuge areas location data. But in the longer term, data sharing will become more and more important. We launched our open data site for geospatial data. I'll give you some examples of the work we've done. Now, I'm hoping that this will animate. Yep, I think it's working. The first problem we looked to solve was the common view of where our network is. Linking back to the data valuation work, this is our most important data set, and we didn't have a clearer view on what it was. It was also the one that carries the safety risk. We needed to let our stakeholders, including sat-nav companies, know when we make changes to geometry and what those changes were. The slides on screen give quite a nice indication of the problem. The red and yellow lines are digital representations of the same road within two different systems at National Highways. You can see all sorts of problems here. Firstly, historical instances of where the two models just don't line up. This is down to data quality issues and the way the data is captured. Secondly, temporal issues. You can see from the model that the road has been realigned at some point. This hasn't been updated in the red model, exacerbating the problem of where the true digital representation of the road is. The blue line is what we call our new consolidated network model, which will over time become the single version of truth as to where our network is. We will slowly but surely replace all of the network models in our systems with the business-owned network model. This was really important to us. We will maintain one version of the truth for other systems to reference. Our next big challenge was to help the organisation fully exploit its geospatial data. Linking back to our discovery work, we knew that we were doing this in a piecemeal and fairly ineffective way. There were pockets of geospatial excellence across the organisation, but we wanted to elevate this and make geospatial data really drive forward the business. We put in place what we call our spatial portal and engaged right across the business. We actively pushed people to think about using geospatial data in a different way. There were efficiency benefits. By moving to one platform, we managed to save quite a lot of money, but it was also made us much more effective as well. Teams have begun to realize that geography is core to the business, and we can use it to improve and deliver improve our delivery as a company. The slide on screen shows how our operations team have utilized the spatial portal to build something we call single view of the network. There are a number of different challenges that we tried to solve with this tool. Control rooms tend to be mostly reactive in what they do. Multiple tools, systems, and reports are used independently of each other. Data is used inconsistently across our regions, and we collect a huge amount of data but don't use it effectively. By putting in place single view of the network, we expect more proactive identification and increased availability of timeliness of data, ability to track metrics in real time as incidents unfold, and a better network visibility across the regions. It can be used for traffic officer deployment, live incident management, and proactive response. So how does it work? The user can navigate through the dashboard by selecting the region or outstation from the top, or by zooming in and out of the map. The notifications and summaries will update as they do. Lots of different datasets can be shown on the map, and for example, traffic officer locations as well as assets and weather events. We can look at crowdsourced data from Waze as well as our CCTV data to help manage incidents, all on one interface. The right-hand side of the screen summarizes what's happening on the network and facilitates decision-making, i.e. how do I manage incidents. The bottom right helps us understand where traffic officers are on our smart motorway network and reallocate them appropriately. The panel on the left gives notifications on incidents that don't seem to be managed yet. You can select one and click on the data you want to see. In the case on the video, it's been repeating on screen. We've zoomed into an incident that's been identified through crowdsourced data, and using our own CCTV imagery, we can see what's going on. This has been rolled out to around 400 people across the organization and will definitely help with the way we control our network. Geospatial driving forward the business. I'm probably doing us a disservice, but I don't think that there's much hugely clever or complicated about this. We're just getting the basics of geospatial data right and building a nice intuitive front end to help us provide this information. This will drive significant financial safety and even carbon benefits for the organization, and as well as improve the experience for our road users. It's gone down really well with early users as the tool. We carried out a Trustpilot size survey. The tool scored 4.3 out of 5, and the feedback from the exercise is really giving us food for thought and helping us understand where we take it next. The third piece of work was to open up our data to others. National Highways is an information provider, not a journey planner. We leave that to the people like Google or Apple, who, to be honest, are a much better place to do that than us. Obviously, though, to get value from our data, we have to make it available. We launched our geospatial open data site with a specific use case, making emergency areas available to sat-nav providers. We will steadily add our other data sets to the site. I think we're up to 5 now. This site's become increasingly important as we move forward. The site will become increasingly important as we move forward, part of our digital roads program. You can see on the slide that it's really easy to use. Just search for the data you want, and then you can view it and download it as an API. Our work to date has been successful because we are able to make geospatial data interesting at a senior level. As such an important element of our work, it's worth briefly reflecting on how we did that. The bullets on screen highlight this. Senior sponsorship was incredibly important. Our CDO helped drive forward, and we had our support of our executive group for data and digital. We clearly defined where we wanted to take data generally through our information vision and strategy. This was built collaboratively with leaders across the business and signed off by the board. Our evaluation work showed us the importance of tackling geospatial data. We had a couple of burning platforms that had to be taken care of. We had a regulatory requirement to share emergency refuge points on our network. We used funding available from this to finance the whole project. Our issue over geometry was highlighted as a safety risk, and it was really important to us that we could understand that, because it highlighted by a senior member of our team. We elevated the conversation at the right time and in the right way. We only talked about our work when we had something interesting to talk about. We avoided talking technically and used language that our stakeholders could really understand, also language that they could relate to. Finally, we managed to develop a really good culture across the team where we drove forward. we worked with external partners such as Esri and Ordnance Survey, and everybody helped us along the way. And quite frankly, without kind of this partnership working environment, we couldn't have achieved. Ordnance Survey were incredibly useful to us, and they helped us with the initial ingest of our data. The level of knowledge and passion around some of these geospatial organisations was incredible, and really helped us make the subject interesting internally. So thanks for letting me talk to you over the last 15 to 20 minutes or so. It's been really good to be here. It's been great to share with you our journey from understanding our value through laying the foundations and some exploitation. I wanted to finish with a question I started with, and that was, this is a question we ask ourselves, and I'd encourage you to ask others, is geography core to your business? I think the answer is yes to most organisations, and I think it's something that we should act on. So yeah, thanks for listening. That's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take questions now. I'll put my email address at the bottom of this last slide. So if you've got any follow-ups, do feel free to contact me, or via LinkedIn is fine as well. Thank you. And yeah, I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks for that, John. That was a really great first presentation for the start of the day. I think it definitely got us all thinking about how possibly we undervalue some of the resources that we actually have. So that's really good to see. Just looking in the chat, there's nothing in questions at the moment, so I'll just give people a couple of minutes in case they've got stuff to ask you. I think one of the things that your talk highlighted was the importance of stakeholders as well, which is certainly something that we're finding in our organisation. You know, having those conversations with people and finding out what's required and how you go about actually delivering data is really important. So
I think that I've worked in various different companies around geospatial, and it's kind of a subject that people don't necessarily understand so much. You know, I think the answer is always just give me a map, you know, and a PDF map at that. And actually, what we try to do is really kind of talk business language as opposed to more technical language about, you know, the power of geospatial, what we can do with it, how it can support the organisation. And again, we only talk. A lesson we really learned was only talk when we had something tangible to talk about as well. So you know, you can't engage senior leaders around GIS and geospatial in intangibles. I think that was a real lesson for us.
Absolutely, yeah. Just see, we've got one question in so far, and it's how often do you update the data sources?
So the data sources into our single view of the network, I think if that's the question, some of them are in near real time. So we've got so we've got kind of links out to stuff like Waze and our other traffic information. So that goes in near real time. Other stuff will be on a daily basis that's less important. Our network model is updated on an overnight basis, and the central one's updated, and it kind of feeds out to the various different systems that use it on a nightly basis. We've also got like a change intelligence process as well. So we've got a little team of graduates working through our initial network model, just to understand where some of the errors are and how we fix it, so we make sure it's excellent. And that is done. Yeah, that's kind of on an ongoing basis.
Another question in is about your open data and whether it's available at no cost, or is there a cost involved?
No, there's not much there's not much data in there at the moment. There's only about 6 or 7 data sets, but we're working on it. And if I can work out how to use a chat, because I'm more of a Teams man than a Zoom man, so if I can work out how to work the chat, I'll put a link in.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I was going to say the chat should be on a button just at the bottom of your screen, so if you just hover over it, it should pop up.
Okay, we'll do.
Yeah, and I guess with like some of your viewers, how do you, a question for me really is, how do you actually view how successful they are, and when do you actually review them again to see what modifications need to be made to meet stakeholders?
So we understand the hits that they get, so we understand how much they're being used and by who, and we review that. And yeah, we talk to end users, so we talk to people. So you'll see in that Trustpilot exercise, when we first rolled it out, we asked people their views, and yeah, we regularly hold internal forums. So we've got kind of I can't remember what we call it now, but a spatial data forum, where we just go around and talk to people really to understand what they need. So yeah, our spatial portal's been rolled out quite widely, and I think we're an organisation of about 6,000 people, and it gets in excess of 2,000 unique users. So actually, it's been we understand from that it's been quite successful as well.
Yeah, excellent. So Seppi's asked a question. He says about your point about the, it just popped off the screen. Bear with me a second. So your point about the importance of partnerships with external partners is well made. Collaboration is the way forwards. Would the BCS GeoVis initiative to create a toolkit for the government geography profession be of interest?
Yeah, certainly keen to learn more. I think what we've done recently is all the work we've done has been on a real kind of tight team internally. So there's only all the work we kind of shared just now. There's only 2 people in National Highways that are kind of leading it. But what we're in the process of doing now is standing up kind of a central geospatial data team. Yeah, so actually, what would be great for those people when they join is to kind of get involved here and understand that a bit more. So yeah, it really would be of interest.
Yeah. That's hopefully something we can evolve over the next year or so. Certainly want to get it moving forwards anyway. So that's really good.
Sounds good.
I've just seen that you've put the link in the chat. So for anyone that is looking for that link, is in the chat. John has made it available for you. And I can't see any more questions coming in. So I think you're off the hook, John. That's first patient out the way. So thank you very much for that.
I can put myself back on mute then. Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, John.